Is everyone able? I know everyone is on mute, but inshallah, if in the chat room you can let me know that you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm very excited that the community was able to put this together. And we have not seen the moon yet. We'll keep an eye out, but inshallah, regardless, we're going to be starting a new program that we're trying to introduce to the community beginning tonight. And so for the next few sessions, we'll just outline the format for people who aren't able to join on time each night. But the purpose will be, we were thinking, most people are going to be missing Tarawih, right? And that's most people's one chance and connection to the masjid and to be able to maybe do something beyond what they're able to do on their own. And so what we're trying to do is introduce a community reading setting, which will start each night by reading the first half of each juz' in the Quran together as a community. So I will lead, inshallah. Dr. Moyed will also be with us. We're privileged to be able to have him in our community as well, to be doing this with us, but also to be sharing insight on the tafsir of a lot of what we will be reading. And the purpose of that being that after we're done with the half juz, we will then share a few gems or reflections and tafsir of the verses that we have just read. After which, there's a little bit of a homework for people to be able to finish the last half of the juz on their own. So inshallah, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Before we start, I ask everyone to make an intention in their heart that, we begin this with sincerity. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, allow us to witness this month of Ramadan, to make it one that is beloved to us, and to make it one in which we strive in sincerity and strive only for His sake, and to be able to go above and beyond what we were able to accomplish maybe throughout the rest of the year, but also in prior Ramadans. And we ask Him to allow us to witness the entirety of the month through the end of it and to achieve forgiveness by the end of it. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bestow His mercy and His barakah upon us, particularly upon the people who may have witnessed this month with us last year, but it may not have been written for them to witness it with us this year. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them maghfirah and to forgive them and to enlighten their graves and to expand them and to give them the companionship of the malaika and the Quran and to return them to Him in the purest of states. Allahumma ameen. We'll go ahead and get started, inshallah. We'll give people just a minute to also, this one shouldn't be too hard, just opening to the first page. But we will begin with Surah Al-Fatiha, inshallah, and we will read until ayah 74, I believe, which is of Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the first half of the juz. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون وإذا قيل لهم لا تفسدوا في الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون الله يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون سم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون أو كصيب من السماء فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق يجعلون أصابعهم في آذانهم من الصواعق حذر الموت والله محيط بالكافرين يكاد البرق يخطف أبصارهم كلما أضاء لهم مشوا فيه وإذا أظلم عليهم قاموا ولو شاء الله لذهب بسمعهم وأبصارهم إن الله على كل شيء قدير يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم فلا تجعلوا لله أندادا وأنتم تعلمون وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله وادعوا شهداءكم من دون الله إن كنتم صادقين فإن لم تفعلوا ولا تفعلوا فاتقوا النار التي وقودها الناس والحجارة أعدت للكافرين وبشر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أن لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار كلما رزقوا منها من ثمرة رزقا قالوا هذا الذي رزقنا من قبل وأتوا به متشابها ولهم فيها أزواج مطهرة وهم فيها خالدون إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعودة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وأما الذين كفروا فيقولون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا يضل به كثيرا ويهدي به كثيرا وما يضل به إلا الفاسقين الذين ينقضون عهد الله من بعد ميثاقه ويقطعون ما أمر الله به أن يوصل ويفسدون في الأرض أولئك هم الخاسرون كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه ترجعون هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن 7 سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين وقلنا يا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة وكلا منها رغدا حيث شئتما ولا تقربا هذه الشجرة فتكونا من الظالمين فأزلهما الشيطان عنها فأخرجهما مما كانا فيه وقلنا اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين فتلقى آدم من ربه كلمات فتاب عليه إنه هو التواب الرحيم قلنا اهبطوا منها جميعا فإما يأتينكم مني هدى فمن تبع هداي فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون والذين كفروا وكذبوا بآياتنا أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأوفوا بعهدي أوف بعهدكم وإياي فارهبون وآمنوا بما أنزلت مصدقا لما معكم ولا تكونوا أول كافر به ولا تشتروا بآياتي ثمنا قليلا وإياي فاتقون ولا تلبسوا الحق بالباطل وتكتموا الحق وأنتم تعلمون وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين أتأمرون الناس بالبر وتنسون أنفسكم وأنتم تتلون الكتاب أفلا تعقلون واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة وإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو ربهم وأنهم إليه راجعون يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأني فضلتكم على العالمين واتقوا يوما لا تجزي نفس عن نفس شيئا ولا يقبل منها شفاعة ولا يؤخذ منها عدل ولا هم ينصرون وإذ نجيناكم من آل فرعون يسومونكم سوء العذاب يذبحون أبناءكم ويستحيون نساءكم وفي ذلكم بلاء من ربكم عظيم وإذ فرقنا بكم البحر فأنجيناكم وأغرقنا آل فرعون وأنتم تنظرون وإذ واعدنا موسى 40 ليلة ثم اتخذتم العجل من بعده وأنتم ظالمون ثم عفونا عنكم من بعد ذلك لعلكم تشكرون وإذ آتينا موسى الكتاب والفرقان لعلكم تهتدون وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم إنكم ظلمتم أنفسكم باتخاذكم العجل فتوبوا إلى بارئكم فاقتلوا أنفسكم ذلكم خير لكم عند بارئكم فتاب عليكم إنه هو التواب الرحيم وإذ قلتم يا موسى لن نؤمن لك حتى نرى الله جهرة فأخذتكم الصاعقة وأنتم تنظرون ثم بعثناكم من بعد موتكم لعلكم تشكرون وظللنا عليكم الغمام وأنزلنا عليكم المن والسلوى كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم وما ظلمونا ولكن كانوا أنفسهم يظلمون وإذ قلنا ادخلوا هذه القرية فكلوا منها حيث شئتم رغدا وادخلوا الباب سجدا وقولوا حطة نغفر لكم خطاياكم وسنزيد المحسنين فبدل الذين ظلموا قولا غير الذي قيل لهم فأنزلنا على الذين ظلموا رجزا من السماء بما كانوا يفسقون وإذا استسقى موسى لقومه فقلنا اضرب بعصاك الحجر فانفجرت منه 12 عينا قد علم كل أناس مشربهم كلوا واشربوا من رزق الله ولا تعثوا في الأرض مفسدين وإذ قلتم يا موسى لن نصبر على طعام واحد فادع لنا ربك يخرج لنا مما تنبت الأرض من بقلها وقثائها وفومها وعدسها وبصلها قال أتستبدلون الذي هو أدنى بالذي هو خير اهبطوا مصرا فإن لكم ما سألتم وضربت عليهم الذلة والمسكنة وباءوا بغضب من الله ذلك بأنهم كانوا يكفرون بآيات الله ويقتلون النبيين بغير الحق ذلك بما عصوا وكانوا يعتدون إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصابئين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون وإذ أخذنا ميثاقكم ورفعنا فوقكم الطور خذوا ما آتيناكم بقوة واذكروا ما فيه لعلكم تتقون ثم توليتم من بعد ذلك فلولا فضل الله عليكم ورحمته لكنتم من الخاسرين ولقد علمتم الذين اعتدوا منكم في السبت فقلنا لهم كونوا قردة خاسئين فجعلناها نكالا لما بين يديها وما خلفها وموعظة للمتقين وإذ قال موسى لقومه إن الله يأمركم أن تذبحوا بقرة قالوا أتتخذنا هزوا قال أعوذ بالله أن أكون من الجاهلين قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا فارض ولا بكر عوان بين ذلك فافعلوا ما تؤمرون قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما لونها قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة صفراء فاقع لونها تسر الناظرين قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي إن البقرة شابه علينا وإنا إن شاء الله لمهتدون قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا ذلول تثير الأرض ولا تسقي الحرث مسلمة لا شية فيها قالوا الآن جئت بالحق فذبحوها وما كادوا يفعلون وإذ قتلتم نفسا فادارأتم فيها والله مخرج ما كنتم تكتمون فقلنا اضربوه ببعضها كذلك يحيي الله الموتى ويريكم آياته لعلكم تعقلون ثم قست قلوبكم من بعد ذلك فهي كالحجارة أو أشد قسوة وإن من الحجارة لما يتفجر منه الأنهار وإن منها لما يشقق فيخرج منه الماء وإن منها لما يهبط من خشية الله وما الله بغافل عما تعملون. Inshallah, after this, for anybody who joined late, just to recap, we'll be reading the first half of the juz of the Quran together as a community, just to give everyone a chance to be able to do that collectively and still be able to witness and enjoy some of that spirit of Ramadan. After that, right now we'll begin a short reflection and a tafsir. And before we begin that, we'll just start with a few thoughts. But post-reflection, post-tafsir, which I will be doing every first day or every initial day, and the following day, so tomorrow, Dr. Moyed will be doing it, inshallah. And we will be having a little bit of a Q&A or opening up the floor to questions right after we close, inshallah. So we can begin. inshallah, the first thing that just comes to mind, right? We're witnessing the presence of, or we've been fortunate to be able to witness this month in a time and an opportunity where the entire world has come to a halt. And the reality is that this month is intended to be a reminder for us, just as we have reminders every single day with our salah, every single week with Jum'ah, and every single year with Ramadan, to intentionally pause and to reflect. And subhanAllah, as I was thinking about, really the state of affairs that most of us are in today, that it's both a blessing and it's a difficulty. It's a trial at the same time, but there is a silver lining to it. And the reality is that this is the first time that even in the month of Ramadan, that the vast majority of us will have a chance and an opportunity to pause and to reflect. Because when thinking about just the past couple of years, right, alhamdulillah, we've had this community going for a little over 5, even 7 years now. And most of us have the opportunity to be able to join. Maybe Tarawih is the only opportunity we get in the day to be able to have some time to dedicate to ibadah and to actually reflect and to think and to enjoy that. But at least personally, right, and anecdotally, that the entire day was spent usually in work and in preparing for Tarawih, and then in Tarawih, it's over and then you're exhausted, right? And by the end of the day, then you have to wake up for suhoor the next day and rinse and repeat. And there was very little chance to be able to just stop and actually do things that are on our own individual bucket list, right? For ibadah, to be able to do azkar, to be able to establish some sort of awrad that is solely between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that nobody else knows of. So the first thing that I will start with, that intention setting, that along with this, right, this is intended to be something that the entire community benefits from. But along with our, desire to complete one recitation of the Quran by the end of the month, that we take it upon ourselves to establish at least one act of ibadah that is done solely and between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that nobody else knows of, to be able to preserve the blessing of this month. So I'll begin with that. Inshallah, we just recited the first half juz of the Quran. And so the first surah, right, that we began with is Surah Fatiha. And, of course, we can't do justice to the entire juz that we're reading in just half, in 10 or 15 minutes. But we'll do our best to cover, if anything, just gems of certain ayahs, or to thematically go through certain stories or themes that are prevalent in the juz that we read for the day. And so we began with Surah Fatiha. And most of us know that a lot of the mufassirun say that if you were to dedicate or to learn about the tafsir in Surah Fatiha, or try to extrapolate the meaning from it, that you could learn an entire, sorry, because I have a noise in the background as well, but that you could extrapolate meaning from it, and you could spend an entire year, just years and years and years, and a lifetime just trying to learn the meaning from this one surah. And that if you break it down even further, that you could spend even more time just learning about the blessings and the hidden meanings and the gems in the basmalah, right? In the first initial, what some people believe is the first ayah, right? While others believe is just the beginning of the entirety of the Quran. That every act of worship that we do, it begins with seeking refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan, and beginning in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and calling upon his most blessed name. So we'll start with that. In that, there's a beautiful theme here, right? The first thing that we know is we begin in seeking refuge from shaitan through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first chapter and in the opening of the Quran. But we also know that in the end of the Quran, in Surah An-Nas, that we also seek the same thing. So when we say الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ, right? That we seek refuge and that we protection from the waswasa and the whisperings of shaitan. The reality being that from the beginning of our lives to the end of our lives, this is a constant theme. And this is something that is revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. But as we'll go through and cover, some of the themes in this in the first juz, that we've witnessed this. We've been, if anything, fortunate to witness this in our own lives. That even the most sincere hearts, right? Even the most sincere hearts, the people who strive the hardest, will fall prey and victim to the whisperings of shaitan. Right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us something very beautiful here, that with the beginning of every action, we still seek refuge in him from shaitan. And that the entirety of our lives also, metaphorically represented through the Quran, right? The beginning of the Quran to the end, all throughout is a striving and a battle against our own nafs and the whisperings of the shaitan. And when we think about the basmala, right, that follows, that when we begin with the first and most prominent names that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that he wants us to know him by, right? Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. That also symbolizes the same thing, right? The first thing that he wants us to know, right? That every day, that before we begin every action, while we begin every single salah, the first thing that he wants us to call upon him by is by his most merciful names, right? So that in the reality it is that when we do slip, which we inevitably most often will, is that we seek to return to him and call upon him by those names, and recognizing that the foundation and the central theme of everything in this deen is rahmah. Right? Something that I shared earlier is that, Dr. Umar Farooq Abdullah, he shared a, insight that he had, that if you were to characterize every single religion by its prevalent theme, that Christianity would be characterized by love. Right? That Judaism would be characterized by its adherence to the law, right? Strict adherence to the law. But if you were to characterize or boil down Islam, the essence of Islam, into one word, it would be rahmah. And we're taught this by the very first thing that we learn as we begin the Quran. So with Surah Fatiha in itself is something that, just a few things that we can learn from it. One, there's a beauty in the fact that the Quran opens, the first thing that it opens with is not a story, right? It is not a ruling. It is not telling us what to do and what not to do. But the first thing that is opening by, it's a dua, right? And that the surah is known by multiple names, some of which, are ash-shifa. It's the cure to everything, right? To every, cure to every poison that the Prophet ﷺ said. It's known as Sab' al-Mathani, right? It's known as al-Quran, the mother of the Quran. It has all of these hidden names because that the entirety of the Quran is encompassed in these themes, in the fact that it is opened by us seeking guidance, and also it's teaching us how to make dua, right? The first thing that is teaching us, the opening to the Quran, is teaching us how to approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That before we do anything, that he's asking us and showing us how to approach him. And there's a hadith, right, narrated by that Abu Huraira relays to us, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I have divided the prayer between myself and my servant equally, and that my servant shall be granted what he asked for. And that when the servant says, all praise and thanks is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and he says, my servant has praised me. And that when he says, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most beneficent and the most merciful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that my servant has extolled me, right? He has continued to praise me even more. Now when he says, Maliki Yawmiddin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds and he says, my servant has glorified me. That Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds that this is between me and my servant shall have what he has requested. Right? The meaning of the verse being that when we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying that you alone that we worship, and your aid alone, right, your help alone is what we seek, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is responding to each and every single one of these verses with his own response. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, that guide us to the straight path of those that you have favored, and not of those who have incurred your wrath, right, or your displeasure, or of those who have gone astray. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds by saying, this is for my servant, and my servant shall have what he has asked for. So right here in the very beginning, he's teaching us that the opening to the Quran is that our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one in which we approach him and ask him for and of everything. And he's showing us how to do it. Obviously, we can't encompass the entirety of the essence in it by any means of Surah Fatiha, but what we'll try to do for the next maybe 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, is just go through some of the themes that Surah Baqarah begins with. And so in Surah Baqarah, he responds to this dua, right? The first thing that we say is, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. We recite Surah Fatiha, and then the first ayahs in Surah Baqarah begin with, AlifLaamMeem, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That when we're asking for guidance, right? اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ in Surah Fatiha, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds in Surah Baqarah. And he says, one, that this is the book in which there is no doubt, هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, right? And that it's a guidance for each of us. And throughout the themes in Surah Baqarah, sometimes when we're reading this separately, right? When we're reading some of the meanings, when we're looking through some of even some of the tafsir, it's very difficult to piece together why certain stories come the way that they do, right? We'll have mentions of Bani Israel. We'll have mentions of Luqman, right? Alayhi salam, even in the first, Sulaiman alayhi salam, even in the first juz. Then you'll have mentions of Ibrahim, right? But what's the reason for all of these? Right? Are they randomly telling us different stories for us to learn from? Or are they tying together something that is even deeper? And so when he's telling us and beginning by saying that this is the book in which you find guidance, he then gives us several examples in this first juz, right? In Surah Baqarah. He begins with giving us examples of three groups of people. The first group are the people who hear the Quran, right? And who listen to it and they respond and they're sincere in their guidance. Then there's the second group of people who they hear the Quran, but then they turn away so that their hearts and their eyes and their ears are sealed from it, right? خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ وَعَلَىٰ سَمْعِهِمْ وَعَلَىٰ أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ. We read that in the second page of Surah Baqarah. That's the second group of people, right? And then the third group of people are people who believe, right? The people who understand the truth in the message, but use it to obtain some sort of worldly gain, right? The hypocrites, right? The munafiqun, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from ever being amongst the second two groups of people, and to always be amongst the people who listen to the message, are able to internalize it and reflect it through the actions in our hearts and our limbs. Allahumma ameen. But he begins with this, right? He begins with these stories demonstrating these groups of people. And so what are these stories? Right? He gives us the reasons why we should believe in him, the proof of the book, and then he begins with the story of Adam alayhi salam and what causes him to fall. Right? We in the second or in the third page, right, with قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا وَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا. In that entire page, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, right? There's several ayahs that relay the story of Adam alayhi salam and what caused him that despite being in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he still fell victim to the whisperings of shaitan. And so if a prophet, right, was able to fall victim to that, right? If someone who was in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, was in Jannah himself, was able to fall for that, then what does that say about the ability of our own states? Right? Is it not something that any of us are protected from? And that we've seen, right, that even the most sincere hearts, the most sincere people, we've seen even ulama fall victim to this. And so we ask and we begin every single action that we do in seeking that refuge from shaitan, so that we do everything that we do in sincerity. So he begins with that story of Adam alayhi salam. Then he follows it up by saying by narrating the story of Iblis, right? That this was somebody who was a guided jinn, right? And despite also being in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being guided, that he still was someone who left the fold, right? In other juzah that we read, right? I think maybe in 2 days we'll get to, or maybe even tomorrow, right? We'll get to Surah Ali Imran, and there's the ayah, رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا, right? It's a very beautiful dua that we read, but sometimes we struggle to actually see why is there such a specific dua in the Quran that's saying that رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا, that do not lead us astray after we have found guidance, right? And we're seeing stories of this in the Quran, that even people who have the truth, even people who have guidance, are able to fall astray from it, And so he gives us the story of Iblis, right? He says, فَمَنِ اتَّبَعْ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And he tells people that as long as you follow my guidance, فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ, that there will be no fear or grief for you. That regardless of whether we fall into the group, fall into the path of Adam alayhi salam, right? There's a very big difference in the way that they fell away from the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And Adam alayhi salam, he fell away and he admitted it, right? He admitted it and he sought forgiveness from himself and from the act that he committed. And so he was a victim to his desire. But with Iblis, right, he fell victim to his own pride and he did not turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that if we ever do fall off from that path, if we ever do slip, if we ever do commit any sort of wrong, that the door is always, always open, but that we have to be able to never come from a place of pride, right? That every single moment that we may commit something that, we may slip, that we may fall victim to our desire, that we may, do something that we may not have expected of ourselves, that we always run and seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that we do not become amongst the second group, right? So we do not become amongst the people who say, that this is what was decreed for me, right? And so it's okay that I did it, right? But that we admit our own wrongdoing, our own intent and our own will that was exercised on that, and that we seek forgiveness for it. After this story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to talk about Bani Israel. So, Ya Bani Israel, اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم. There's several ayahs throughout the middle part of that, the first half, right, where he begins to talk about Bani Israel. And he tells us about these different groups of people, the same two paradigms, right? Bani Israel were people who had guidance, but they fell victim to their desires. Right? And then even amongst Bani Israel, there became two different groups. They were the people who then returned, right? Like Adam alayhi salam, who admitted their wrongdoing and were able to return and seek forgiveness and to return to find guidance. But then there was the other group of people, right? The vast majority that then persisted in their wrongdoing and continued to persist to the point that it turned into arrogance, right? And which they became part of that second group. They became part of the group that Iblis or that Shaitan represents. Then you have, after that, mentions of Fir'aun. This is somebody, again, who falls into that second group. That somebody who insists on dhulm, right? Is somebody who insists on worshipping nothing but himself and commanding people to worship himself. Right? Then we have the story after that of Sulaiman, right? Somebody who had access to everything. In fact, even more than Fir'aun. Right? Somebody who had access to his desires, who had a kingdom greater than Fir'aun, and that despite all of these things, he used these examples to be able to guide people, but to be able to attain even greater nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we're throughout multiple themes that we're seeing in this first half or in the first juz, right, is that there are people who are given the same situation, right? That you could be put in the same situation, but the way that you react and respond can be two different things. Okay. And then the last, one we'll cover just for the sake of time, right, is that we then, and this is my favorite, and we've talked about this in a little bit in some of the family nights, but the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And one of the most beautiful parts, my favorite page in this juz is in the last few pages, right, that you may read individually tonight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates for us, the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, right, praises his character, and talks about how he is someone who, despite every situation that he's put into, that he always responds in a manner that is pleasing to Allah. So, قَالَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ أَسْلِمْ قَالَ أَسْلَمْتُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That any time he was called to submit, that he submitted himself, regardless of the situation. And the most beautiful verse that I find in this juz is keeping in mind, right, this is something that was revealed thousands of years after to the Prophet ﷺ, right? That when Ibrahim ﷺ makes a dua that is so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, رَبَّنَا وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِكَ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala listens to that dua, right? And he preserves it for generations and generations until he reveals it to the Prophet ﷺ. I want you to think about this for a quick second, because the reality is that the vast majority of us make dua, and when it's not answered right away, we struggle to understand why, or we struggle to find solace in the fact that maybe it will be accepted in some shape or form, right? But this is the dua that was made by the Prophet, right? By one of the most beloved people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ibrahim alayhi salam, that it was so beloved that he did not even know, right? But for generations it's preserved, and then it's told to the Prophet ﷺ, who is a response to that dua, who is an answer to that dua. Right? When Ibrahim alayhi salam is praying for Rasulam minhum, yet a messenger that will yatlu alayhim ayatika, that will recite the verses, wa yu'allimuhumul kitab, and teach the book, and have wisdom, wa yuzakkihim, and purify them, right? And that later in another verse we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds, but he puts tazkiyah first, wa yuzakkihim wa yu'allimuhumul kitab, right? Teaching us that purifying your heart first is the first step for you to be able to benefit from the verses that are revealed to you. We're at 10:15, inshallah, so we'll close there. We'll end with the dua, inshallah, after that. But what we'll do is, the format of the session is, for about 10-15 minutes, we will share that reflection, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the format is going to be just through the chat, or even potentially a whiteboard, right, where people are going to be able to see everything. And so we'll close with that, inshallah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for anything that may have said that was incorrect, or communicated incorrectly. That is from myself and from shaitan. And any benefit that you may have obtained is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and from the wisdom of my teachers. Inshallah, we'll open up. If Dr. Moyed also wants to join, we can open up the floor for questions. And there may not be questions, and that's totally okay. The purpose of this is to be able to share this with the rest of the community, right? And so we'll give people maybe 3 minutes, right, till 10:20, after which we will just close with the dua, inshallah. And if there are no questions and people have them overnight, we can always collect them through maybe the email, or we'll find a way to do that, inshallah, and then answer them in the next session. And it looks like I have not been monitoring, but I believe the moon was confirmed to be sighted in Arizona and in San Diego in California. So Ramadan Mubarak, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this from us and allow us to witness the entirety of the month, and may He make it one that is more blessed and beautiful and sincere for us in our hearts and in our striving than any Ramadan that has come in the past. Allahumma ameen. Okay, inshallah, I don't think there are any questions, so we'll close here. We'll give people an opportunity to finish the rest of the juz on their own, and to pray Tarawih and Isha in their homes. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa barik wa sallim. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وادخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم والله المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله اللهم إنا نسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to witness this month in a manner and to strive in this month in a manner that is pleasing to Him. And we ask Him to allow us to enter this month in the state that we are currently in and to leave this month in a state in which we have been forgiven for all of our shortcomings, the ones that we are aware of and the ones that we are not. We ask Him to alleviate each and every single one of the burdens that ourselves, our families, or our community, or our brothers and sisters around the world may be facing. We ask Him to grant shifa to those that may be suffering from any sort of illness, particularly in this time. Right? We ask Him to return them to a state of health that they may dedicate to striving in His path and to be able to recognize the blessing of the health that has been given to them. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, particularly for the mothers and the fathers in the community, to put barakah into their time, to be able to forgive them and to allow them to be a source of guidance and happiness and barakah in their own homes, and to be able to be a source of hidayah for their children, and to be able to experience this month without the stresses and the burdens of having to take care of their own homes, and to make that in itself a form of ibadah that is pleasing and beautiful to Him. We ask Him that He guides us in our entire family, those that love us, those that we love, and we ask Him to allow us to enter the fold of the Quran in this blessed month, and to not allow us to leave this month until we have established ourselves as the select group of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praises and draws near through the Quran. And we ask Him to accept it from us and to purify us in our shortcomings in our hearts and any burden and weight that our heart may be carrying as we enter this month. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun al mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakallah khair, everybody. Inshallah, tomorrow we will continue this session. I think it looks like, for the first 20 minutes, it'll take about 20 minutes to go through that first half juz of the Quran, and then we'll try to keep the reflection about 20 to 30 minutes. But if anybody does have any thoughts, any comments as we continue to refine, please do share it via the email, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.